And most successful companies share one thing: they develop their people. The Success Launch Point makes it simple with on-demand courses, live coaching, and a thriving professional community. Your team will gain confidence, sharpen skills, and deliver more value, while staying loyal to the company that invests in them. To take your workforce to the next level, check out modernobserver.com/launchpoint.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, life, and career. I'm your host, Eric Lopkett with the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Well, I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. I can't believe we're already in the run-up to 2026.
It's crazy. Here we are, mid to late November, and I'm looking out my back window here, and I'm seeing gray skies, blue skies, sunshine, and whatever. It must be near Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yes, we are coming up on the Thanksgiving holiday and, of course, the greater holiday season. And, you know, I've spoken to a lot of folks, and 2025 seems to have just zipped by. And now folks are reflecting on what they've done, looking forward to 2026 and figuring out what comes next.
Yep. And today we have actually a special guest who I met for the first time a dozen years ago and then probably didn't see her for at least 10, 12 years. And then she showed up again about a year ago in a West Hartford Chamber meeting. And what networking, which we talk about all about, is about women relationships. And McFarland and I developed one then, and then we rekindled that about 2 months ago. And basically, I met her when she was the birthing lady, which was a really, really interesting profession that she did to really help out mothers through the process. And then she's really kind of reinvented herself over the last several years. And she does some wonderful therapy one-on-one, non-invasive. And at the networking meetings that I am at, she has been getting more and more and more testimonials just because of her approach, and kindness and so on and so forth. It's totally non-invasive. So, Nicole, tell us about your journey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here, and I'm glad that we reconnected, Chip. Um, so yeah, I used to be the birth lady. I was an activist and advocate for helping women access healthier birth options and navigate the maternity care system. And over the years, I reached sort of I hit a ceiling with that, I would say, and I decided to go back to grad school. And so I went back to grad school starting in 2014 and got master's degrees in social work and public health, and then went on to become a licensed clinical social worker. And now I am a therapist and I help people overcome trauma. That's my specialty. And the therapy that I work with, the main one that I work with now is called accelerated resolution therapy. And it's a non-invasive trauma therapy where you don't even need to talk about what you're processing in order to heal your trauma. So it's very powerful and also gentle and really works quickly to help people make changes in their lives.
So tell us a little bit about that process. What does this session look like from the point of view of the patient? How are if they're not talking about the trauma itself, what are they talking about?
So the way it works is accelerated resolution therapy. We follow scripts that help people um, visualize the trauma that they experience. We call that exposure. They're getting an exposure to the experience. And so they're doing it just by visualizing it in their mind. You don't have to talk about it. And as the therapist, I don't even need to know what it is that you're visualizing. And that can be very helpful, especially for things that involve shame or embarrassment that might keep somebody from coming into therapy because they don't want to talk about what happened to them or what they did to somebody else. So they don't have to talk about it. They can just visualize it in their mind. And then we also process sensations that come up in the body. And the way we do it is with it's called bilateral stimulation, where we either use eye movements or we use these electronic buzzers that you hold in your hands and they vibrate they alternate vibrating in your hands. And it makes the brain activate different sides of the brain very quickly. And it's the bilateral stimulation that really allows for the trauma to unlock, but it's working with the visualizations in their mind. So, what it looks like for a client is they come in, I have a recliner in my office, and they just put their feet up and relax. They hold the tappers in their hands, and I walk them through this script where they visualize the experience that they had. They visualize it a second time, which allows them to get a little bit of distance from it. And then they create their own, we call it a director scene, where they create the visualization the way that they want to remember it. And so we get to a positive outcome for every session. It's designed to come to a positive outcome. So the sessions take about an hour and a half. The talking happens when we're checking in about body sensations. What are you feeling in your body now? Has it moved or changed? Is there anything you care to share about the way your visualization changed? So they can share as much or as little as they like about that, as long as we know that the process is moving the way it's supposed to move.
All right, now you mentioned the handheld buzzers, which stimulate different parts of the brain. I'm assuming this is encouraging the patient to actually process the trauma using both sides of the brain rather than, either the right or left, which they tend to do.
Correct. Yeah. We're not sure exactly how it works, but because it gets the different areas of the brain activated in a way that they are not, the way it's not customarily working, it allows access to different memories. It allows for different kinds of processing to happen. So people get new insights. The way that I like to describe it is that it unhooks the emotion from the memory and the response. So instead of getting triggered, you have just enough time to respond rather than react. So oftentimes when people have trauma, they go directly into the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
This kind of unhooks that fight or flight response so that they have a little bit of breathing room to think about how they want to respond to things. So oftentimes what happens is they'll make a quick change with the accelerated resolution therapy. It unhooks that response. But then there's some work to do around the behavior change because oftentimes people have been carrying trauma for so long that they get into these automatic, it's an automatic response. You develop these behavior patterns. Well, even if you've made a change about it, everybody around you hasn't made the same change as you yet. And it takes a few talk therapy sessions sometimes to, like, have everything catch up and lock into being the same speed working, the way that you want it to work and making those kinds of adjustments. So,
Sure, because you're making the change, but if you've been suffering from this trauma for quite a while, your behaviors have created expectations in other people. So even
exactly.
even though you're changing, their expectations don't change as quickly.
Right. Exactly. But
Yeah.
it's good, people make changes and the changes tend to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know, we talk a lot about, basically it's starting with the self-image because obviously the biggest problem I would imagine, and most people to work with, even wanting to talk to you is taking that first step and doing it. And trauma and shame, embarrassment, self-image, and so on and so forth is a huge, huge part of it, which we all know that we've talked this through and through that we've created ourselves as human beings. I mean, we are all unconditionally created from loving kindness and compassion, and if you follow any religions at all, we are all unconditionally forgiven. And that's just the way things are. So our biggest battle is with ourselves. And so even when people start talking with you and so on and so forth, and some people start reacting negatively, I like to use the phrase, it's a little bit brash, but what other people think of you is none of your business because they're all going through their own problems and so on and so forth too. And that's really something that they need to accept. So basically, since you've been working with this, uh, obviously it took a little time, I think, for people to take your breakthrough sessions and so on and so forth because they do have to sit down and talk about it. And I know that you were originally gearing this more towards women, but in our group, you started talking to men saying, "Hey, I'd love to have you too." And you had a few people have sessions with you, and they come back raving about this. And so this really is something that is for everybody. And me being a guy too, I can totally understand with that too, because you and I had our one-on-one and so forth. And I could come back if I wanted to do that, but I've been working on a whole lot of stuff myself. But talk about the process, and I think it's really, really neat that people are coming to you now more and more and more once they break the ice and understand what's going on. Because I'm sure you have to go through all that psychological thing with them, what reality really is, that that person in the mirror is a pretty cool person no matter what anybody thinks now or after you try this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like best about this therapy is that not a lot there's not a lot of talking. Like, people really can come in. I can do an accelerated resolution therapy session with them the first time I meet them. And it's not about me convincing them that they are good people or they're deserving of anything, which of course they are. It's about them uncovering it in their own minds through this process, and I think that's why it's so powerful. Like, really, uh, I'm just like an operator, I just walk them through. I mean, I don't wanna discredit myself because I do think that I'm pretty insightful with my clients, but it really is about them solving their own problems, and it's amazing the way that by using this technique, that their brains are able to come up with the solutions that are tailor-made for them and the relationships that they're in, their personal history. They're really uncovering the answers for themselves. So, and I think that's why it's so powerful because it's not me telling them, it's their brain already knowing the answer and just bringing it to light.
So, just out of curiosity, you had mentioned that during the therapy, you don't even have to talk about what the trauma is. Have you come across situations where the patient did not want to talk about the trauma? They go through the therapy, and when they come out the other end, they're actually able to speak about it because of the progress you've made.
Yes. Yes, that has happened. I have had a couple clients who have literally told me nothing. It's stuff that they just really don't wanna talk about. Um, but throughout the process, by checking in with them, did the sensations move? Did, do you have positive sensations after you did the director scene? Those are cues to me that the process is working, and then afterwards, they can share more easily because the emotion is unhooked from the problem, so they don't feel the same way about it. They are generally able to talk about it more freely.
Fantastic. So, tell me a little bit about going from the birthing lady to this new therapy? How did you make that decision? And what was that journey like?
Sure. So, um, I was a president of a national organization, a grassroots organization that promoted the midwifery model of care. I opened a chapter in West Hartford. Um, the organization was called Birth Network National, and I had a local chapter to bring women and healthcare providers together to provide information and support for accessing healthier birth options. And then I was invited in onto the national board of that organization, and I served for 6 years, and then I became the president of that organization. So I was working nationally with other national organizations on this issue of healthy birth options, which is a crisis with cesarean sections and a lot of stuff. We still talk about the problems in maternity care today, but so I was working on the national level, but I had no credentials. And when my presidency ended, I wanted to continue working at that level. So I decided to go back to grad school. So I studied social work administration and public health. And but that was a 5-year process. And then to get licensed was another 3 years. And past that, it was like my interests had changed and the kind of work that I wanted to do had changed. But I took my expertise after I got licensed. There is a program in Connecticut called the Proud Program, which serves pregnant and parenting women with substance use disorders. And that was a great fit for me because I had so much experience around maternity care and early parenting. So, and while I was working with them, all these women had serious trauma. So I started to look for other therapies because talk therapy just doesn't work well on trauma. So I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see. So I started looking for other therapies. So I found out about accelerated resolution therapy and I got trained in that and started working with that. And then I also later on got certified as a psychedelic assisted therapy provider. So I did a year-long training in working with psychedelic medicines to heal trauma and other mental health issues. So, I just pursued my interests and my needs that I was encountering with my clients. And so over the years, like Chip mentioned, that when I opened up my private practice about a year and a half ago, and initially I was focusing on mainly working with women because that's where my expertise was for 20 something years. But then as my path progressed and it became more about trauma, I'm able to open it up because everybody can have trauma. And so opening it up to men as well is, just in private practice. It's um, just part of like the next step along the path. So that's how it happened.
Nice. Yes, unfortunately, there's no shortage of trauma, and it doesn't discriminate as to who it hits.
True. True.
No, and obviously it's, which I know, and I'm sure you know, and everybody knows that it's tougher for men to talk about this normally as a species.
Mhm.
than it's for women. I mean, yeah, we don't make as many phone calls and this and that, whatever, and talk about other things. And it's, I don't think we're as social as far as that stuff goes. So it's a little bit tough. But I mean, you, as I said, you have such a wonderful demeanor about you to just open the door to do that. And obviously, I think that's something that comes natural to you, but it's something that you've worked on over the years too, because obviously you have to be that way in doing what you're doing because you've heard me mention this too. I mean, people only like to get taught in school and preached at in church. So you can't be doing that stuff as far as your methods go. You
Right.
just have to be open to listening and coaching and next step, and the way that you do it without having them have to spill the beans if they don't want to do that is great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's helpful. But we're talking about trauma, but we could also shift it to talk more about like optimal, um, uh, like being able to just work well in your job, right? Optimal performance. Because if you take it out of the realm of trauma, there's big T trauma and there's little t trauma. And, everybody has limiting beliefs. Everybody has experiences that have been difficult for them that it doesn't necessarily qualify as trauma, but there's still stuff to work through. And, you know, ways of thinking that if you're able to shift your thinking, you might be a lot happier, you might be a lot more productive, you might be able to achieve more of what you want to achieve. And I think that therapy in general, but then these types of therapies that I do can be really helpful for that kind of stuff too, because everybody's just trying to make it through life. Like, we got this journey that we're on, and it's not always easy and it's not always straightforward. And it's helpful to have people to talk to or places to go where you can process whatever challenges you're facing and just get support for it so that you can move on and be the best that you can be. So that's some of the work that I like to do too. It's not always delving into these deep, dark waters. Sometimes it's just helping people to live happier lives.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, optimal performance is a natural side effect to people going through your program if it's really working for them, which is just wonderful. I'm sure that's probably makes you feel most accomplished in what you're doing, what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I do really like helping people. And it's especially fulfilling to see that, when you can see the results so quickly and people really feel the shift and they like to talk about it, they like to share about it with their friends. So it's very fulfilling work.
Yeah, you had just made the comment, life is hard. And there's a difference between having the blues and suffering from depression and dealing with life and dealing with trauma. What are some of the warning signs that somebody might see that tells them, you know what? I think I need help. I need something like this.
Mm, that's a really important question. Um, if you're persistently sad or have very little energy, very little motivation, or alternatively, you're getting angry and irritable at people seemingly for very little reasons, those can be warning signs that you're starting to get overwhelmed and that getting some help would could be beneficial. People talk about just like dragging themselves through their day, not feeling satisfied, not feeling happy. But sometimes it's not even about being sad, it's about being flat, you know. And people talk about burnout at work, like just not wanting to go in to work, not wanting to deal with people anymore. Anytime that you're feeling really disconnected or separated from other people or from the things that you enjoy doing, those are warning signs that it's time to go look for help. And of course, with other more serious things, like somebody who's got blown PTSD, they may have periods where they're literally checking out, like they dissociate, it can get more serious. But for most people, it's that lack of connection, a lack of energy, or just worrying all the time, not feeling at ease. If you're not at ease for large periods of time, that's a sign that you should be looking for help or support.
All right. So I assume that the technique you're using, especially since you're not actually being told what the trauma is necessarily, works pretty much across the board. It doesn't matter what the trauma is. the focus is really separating from it and moving past. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. This this modality is very adaptable to a lot of different things because if you can visualize what the problem is, then you can work with it.
Nice.
Yeah, I think basically what life is so complicated, and obviously that's one of the biggest sources of trauma, and especially if it starts and just keeps building up, building up, building up. And I would imagine that one of the things that you are trying to do for people is just getting back to simplicity, to a few basic things to get all of the 60,000 thoughts, most of negative, out of their brain and kind of refocus on different things every day. Because I mean, we are human social creatures. And if we're all by ourselves, it gets bad. And we're really all in the need for companionship and friendship, no matter whether we're by ourselves or with other people too. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you just, I'm sure that's what you do is just kind of put things in proper perspective for people that this is the hierarchy of things as opposed to,
Right.
right?
There are 3 questions that I talk about with my clients all the time to bring because we'll do the accelerated resolution therapy, and for some people, that's enough, if they had, like, one thing that they're dealing with, that might be enough to help them move on, but otherwise, their functioning is pretty good. Sometimes for other people, they need a different perspective. We're doing, more talk therapy. The questions that I always ask are, "What are your values? What are your boundaries? And how do you wanna show up?" And it really comes down to just those 3 things. When you get clarity on those, what's important to you, how close or how separate do you need to be from the person who you're dealing with to feel comfortable and work effectively with them? And how do you wanna present yourself in the situation? When you have clarity about that, you can pretty much figure out any problem and how you wanna proceed. So, that's what I work with, and it is pretty simple, and when you start talking through it with somebody to help them get that clarity, um, we can move through things pretty quickly.
Fantastic. So we are coming up on the end of our time. So before we do, if someone wants to get a hold of you, possibly go through the process with you, how can they do so?
So they can call me, text me, or they can go to my website at www.azure-psychotherapy.com.
Okay, can you, for our listeners, can you spell the web
Sure.
address?
www.azure-psychotherapy.com.
Right.
Psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy they can figure out. Yeah.
It's azure like the color blue, azure blue. Yeah.
All right. So again, we're as we wrap up, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
I just hope that everybody has a wonderful holiday season and that it's a time for connection and joy. And I'm so appreciative of this opportunity to come and chat with you both. Thank you.
And it was great having you. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners?
Well, as I said, over the last year since you started coming back, people, when you first showed up, were probably just raising their eyes a little bit and say, wow, this sounds good, and so on and so forth. And what's been so cool for me, and I've noticed this in the whole room every week when the testimonials come running around. I mean, one of the things that you are doing with people is building momentum towards positivity and towards basically walking a better path. And I see that through the testimonials in the room. And I don't know if you can feel that, sense that through the room as that's been going on, but every single week that we have our connections meetings, there's more and more and more of that. So you are building momentum with a capital M. And those of you out there that are listening to this, if you take nothing more from this, just listen to it and possibly reach out to McCall about this, but understand that you can do this too and build your own positive momentum. And happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think for me, the big takeaway is literally the simplicity of the process itself and the results that it actually gives. We're almost pre-programmed to think, well, if I'm going to get big results, it's going to have to take a long time. It's going to have to make a lot of effort. And that's simply not the case. This sort of a process is simple for you to do, and the results speak for themselves. So I hope if our listeners need something like this, their takeaway should be you don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to worry about the effort involved. Just get started and step away from the trauma that's been haunting you. And yes, you can do that. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.